There may be no clear gateway drug to magic in 2026 than astrology. You don't need psychic abilities or a spirit court or a wider mystical philosophy to dabble in astrology, just a birthday. I've always been a proponent of practical magic, the kind that helps you get stuff, not as an end goal, but as a necessary step for many in re-enchanting their minds. Astrology can do something similar, though, with merely a natal chart reading. What do the planets have to do with who I am? It doesn't really matter why astrology can tell you about yourself. The power is in simply acknowledging the mystery. And for many, this is what astrology is for. It's a tool for self reflection and self care. It reinforces the idea we have about ourselves and can help us better navigate the world around us. To many, it is more psychological than magical, more personal than universal. I've always found astrology interesting, but it wasn't until I first encountered Hellenic and electional astrology that I really got hooked. Rather than consulting astrology to understand why I'm so stubborn or why my partner and I have different tidying habits, Hellenic astrology revealed a vast and hitherto invisible procession of fate and fortune, a mirror of world events playing out in the heavens that could not only tell me when I might go through a career change or have children in the next decade, but also when a war might break out or a political leader fall or a revolution erupt in a given country. On a personal level, Hellenic and electional astrology has been a valuable tool to plan rituals and reference for omens, but on a macro level, I've engaged with it almost like prestige TV. The height of this macro engagement for me comes every January when my favorite astrologers put out their forecasts for the year to come. Living now squarely in interesting times, in a world of ever increasing chaos and novelty, these forecasts have become something of a cathartic schadenfreude, if I'm being honest. With all the discord and despair and conflict playing out before us on the world stage, it can be mildly comforting to, if nothing else, feel like you have some idea what might be coming next, if for no other reason than to rubberneck from the comfort of a moment in time where it's all still merely unfolding. I find astrology used to these ends to be fascinating and useful and important. If our engagement with astrology ends there, though, at the level of forecasting the inevitable, it can also be paralyzing and disempowering. If at the most basic level, astrology is something about our personality, then at this elevated level, it can often feel like astrology is something that happens to us. Teagan West has a different approach, not only drawing on the revival of ancient techniques, but imbuing her practice with animism and alchemy. What happens to astrology when we view the planets as ancestors? What if astrology isn't something that happens to us and is instead a hermetic unfolding, an act of co-creative evolution coming just as much from us as from the stars? Tegan's year ahead forecasts are my personal favorite, spirit-led, embodied, and in conversation with fate. In our chat, we explore Tegan's background and her unique philosophy and approach to magic and ceremony in the stars. Also, in our bonus conversation on Patreon, I present Tegan with a few key planetary movements in the coming year and get her take on how the magically inclined might engage with them. Tegan West, welcome to Radical Elf Fam. It is a pleasure to have you here today.
So happy to be here. Super special.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to you a little bit before we hit record how, I largely know you from your podcast, your astrology podcast, I should say, Altar of Stars, which I really like. I love astrology, but it's very rare to have astrology through the lens of animism and ancestral work and magic. And you really loop that all in a way that I'm not familiar with elsewhere. So incredibly valuable stuff. And that's largely why I invited you on. But in doing the preparations for the show, I was looking at your site and seeing what other things you were doing, traditions you were involved in. And apparently astrology is like just scratching the surface of what you do. So maybe to kick things off, if you can just give a bit of an introduction to who you are, what you do, what kind of services you offer, what traditions you're involved in, just kind of overview for people who maybe aren't as familiar with you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think about this a lot, like how to condense the many-limbed being of like a practitioner's work, you know? And I
Hmm.
definitely, like, took the spiral path to where I'm at right now, kind of, like, collecting pieces from different traditions on the way, but also just, like, being really gifted with some teachers that were like, "You, I want you to study this thing and go deep with this thing," and so my foundation was actually, like, over a decade ago now, in the Vedic tradition. I'm, like, formally an Ayurvedic physician, which not a lot of people know, but that was, like, my first true mentorship where my teacher was like, "Yeah, you're good at the body stuff, you're good at the healing stuff, but you're better at Jyotish and, like, studying the patterns of creation and understanding that this world is really there's more that meets the eye." So, lots of gratitude to that tradition and the Vedic ancestors for, like, bringing me in, and that really led me to recognizing, like, the wild animist cosmovision of different creation stories and um, eventually in there in my path I moved back home to upstate New York, Seneca Land, where yeah, I reconnected with my family and the indigenous community here, and that's really where my own like ritual practice started. And I also had this beautiful experience of meeting a teacher and an uncle of mine who was again like you. I want to teach you certain things about this tradition that again had to do with like my ability to see spirits and use that as a healing modality. So um astrology is kind of my party trick because it's the thing that I, like, know most about, but my real heart in these, like, really rich traditions of healing that are thousands of years old that hold so much, yeah, relationship to the land and healing through the land and through the ancestors. So, different limbs of the same creature, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, as much as you're comfortable sharing, no need to go deeper than you want, but were you raised in a way that was conducive to this path? Or is this
Mm,
something that you found your way to on your own?
hmm. Um, I think I was definitely raised in a container that like a community and also like my parents are very open to the spirit world and my mom especially is like, I grew up as a kid having tons of spirit contact and she didn't shut it down. She was like, "Yeah, cool. Like I don't know what to do with that, but um she didn't shut it down." So it was always part of my reality that I just like never really questioned, and I think it created the conditions for me to like take it seriously when I grew older and started to consider like, well, maybe this could help people, like maybe there's something that I am doing here that's beneficial for us. And the more that I reconnected with my own ancestors, and of course, like I didn't grow up necessarily in an animist cosmology. I kind of recovered it over the course of my life. But that's, I think, where it became more conducive to say, like, "Here are the teachings, here are the practices," like, in my early 20s, and from there onwards, I was really taken under the wing of specifically in the Anishinaabe tradition is the tradition that my Uncle Hawk has really, like, transmitted to me, and so, it's more so in my adulthood that kind of, like, hmm, yeah, those relationships deepened. Yeah.
That's interesting. So, you describe having strong spirit contact and sight from a younger age. Until you got to that point where you were able to be an adult and dive in more intentionally, what are some of the ways you were able to navigate that? Did you have a Wicca phase? Was there things that you did to try to like contain or work with it? Or was it just a thing that was in the background or a thing you
Mhm.
just lived with?
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I never had a Wicca phase. I never did. I was like, "I don't know about that. It seems kinda kitschy." Like,
That's fair.
yeah, I was, like, a little discerning about it, but actually, when I was, like, 13 years old, I grew up dancing from, like, age 2 onwards, and I had a ballet teacher who was, like really into the philosophy of the yogic tradition, not like the asana, yoga land stuff that we see. She was like transmitting the teachings, and that I think really started to shape my understanding of like creation and consciousness in ways that again like facilitated my connection to animism and ritual that felt quite natural, you know? So yeah, it was actually like the Vedic tradition that claimed me first. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So yoga leads you to the Vedic tradition. When you're in high school, are you studying Vedic spirituality and stuff
Yes.
like that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way that was, like, kinda hardcore and definitely contributed to my black sheepness, but all for the best,
Mhm,
you know? Yeah, took it
mhm.
very seriously, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so you're doing the Vedic path, and is the next step in all of this your uncle coming to you and
Mhm.
bringing you into that tradition?
Yeah, it was this movement through, like, the Vedic and then studying Ayurveda and then,
Mhm,
like, reconnecting with my family here in, upstate New York, where lots of those like, basically coming into a community and a tradition where there's constant ritual being held. And so me, like, showing up to sit in lodge every week and me, like, sitting with the community was really where this, like, larger invitation to say, like, "Okay, you're talking to spirits all the time, like, do you wanna know what to do with that?" This kind of
mm.
yeah, invitation. So, very blessed with that reconnection. Yeah.
And so at that point, having been enmeshed in the Ayurvedic path, the philosophies and cosmologies of that, entering to this new current, what was it that jumped out to you as being something you needed to invest as much in as you did? You know, some people maybe find their thing and they focus on it specifically and don't branch out to other currents.
Yeah, heard, yeah.
Was this new phase in your trajectory seeming to be a companion to what you've already been doing?
Yeah, that's such a great question.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it kind of like if I had to look at the through line, right? I think about this a lot. Like what's the thread that connects all of these different limbs? Because to me they all exist within me in like a very harmonized state. And I think for me it's like a study of creation, right? It's a study that all of these different traditions are the fingers pointing at the moon and it's this like relationship directly with the mystery that says like yeah, there's some aliveness pulsing through all of this, inviting you to participate. And to me, that's what astrology absolutely facilitates, right? That's what like, ritual connection, spirit work, ancestor work, all of these things are like, can you feel it? Can you hear it? It's right here. The imminence of the other world is right here. And it's like, how do you want to dance? You know, how do you want to try to communicate with it? And like I mentioned before we got on the call, I'm very mercurial. So there's like naturally different I'm testing all these different like modes of communication um to eventually like I think this question about my next like arc of growth is actually about just sitting back and learning how to listen and not needing to get in there with all of these different frameworks and really just being humbled by the mystery of it, you know, and humbled by the spirit world that um, you don't necessarily need to overemphasize the mind and like the systems. You can actually just right experience direct gnosis when you're in relationship with the other than human world. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is like the map walked me to the door and now I'm in the mapless territory that I have to really just learn how to listen and be in right relationship with the other world, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I really resonate with that a lot. That's kind of been, even though I think we've taken different routes, it sounds
Mhm.
like, but the realization I've had a lot just in the past year or so is the importance of having a perennial philosophy
Mm.
and how it's in seeing the connections between diverse traditions and cultures and paths that you really start to get a sense of the truth of it. Like, for example, I do have a really strong interest in Irish and Scottish mythology and folklore. And it's not really until I started looking at certain things in Vedic mythology and things like that that I could fully grasp what I think I'm seeing within that specific culture. So when you start to look wider, it's as though they all hold clues to something bigger, and then you can start to be more fluent in each individual one. Does
Yeah.
that resonate?
So beautiful. That's so beautifully said, and yeah, a complete resonance. I think that that's, like, they've all kind of fed each other in my experience, and as the spiral, like, has started to tighten over these last few years, it's kind of this acknowledgement that it's yeah, many ways to be in relationship with life, through just different cosmologies, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. So yeah, at that point, I'm guessing is when the ancestors as something really broad and diverse would start coming to your life. So I'm looking at your trajectory still. So yeah, what was that opening up like for you?
Yeah. It was kind of this acknowledgement that, in the same way that I can dip my toes in these different traditions and, like, learn from them. My uncle was at one point, as he was kind of deepening into teaching me about healing work and spirit work, he's like, if you're not right with your people, like, none of this stuff is going to be embodied. Like, that's the place from which all of this other stewardship actually has to come from. And so it was kind of like a dog with its tail between its legs, turning towards my people and being like, "I know you've been here the whole time, and
Uh-huh.
I haven't even asked," I haven't really even, asked, like, "What do you think about all this?" Like, I'm actually the steward of all your stuff, so what is all this that I'm working with? Um,
Hmm.
which kind of instantly had this a little bit of an overwhelming amplifying effect on my own spirit connection. It was like the lid got busted off of a fire hydrant, and it took me a little while to realize that, like, oh, okay, this is a lot of their gifts, is like this ability to communicate and see all of these different patterns. I learned that there's astrologers in my family going back like many generations, so it was this like huge recovery process of being like, none of this is a coincidence, child, none of this is trivial. um
Hmm.
and also, I will say, especially in the past handful of years, helped me to kind of hone, um, what I see as, like, a phase of really collecting a lot of different information and traditions and then saying, like, "What's the thing that I really want to devote myself to?" And I think it's been pretty clear that my own relationship to the sky and the stars and how it like trickles down through the body and our relationship to the spirit world and to ritual practice. Like, to me, astrology holds everything within it. It allows us to like have a framework to hold everything else, in regards to our relationship to life on earth. So that's kind of where, I started the Altar of Stars podcast like almost 3 years ago. And that was their suggestion, like, just hone into this. This is a
Hmm.
huge ancestral gift. Um, and reconnecting other people with their ancestors really came from that, like, lived experience of what it uh yeah, what it created in my life, this sense of, like, personal responsibility. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really interesting. Yeah, I like that hermetic view of the stars and the planets and its reflection in our lives. I get that a lot from your show, hearing you talk about, a forecast, but it's in a very embodied way, which I really like. I am interested though, kind of still sticking with this biography a bit. So, was astrology something you were studying throughout this whole process, or was there a point where that became an interest? Like, yeah, when
Mhm,
did astrology pop, and how did that develop for you?
mhm.
Besides the fact that clearly your ancestors said, do this. So I guess that's where it developed, but
Well, yeah, it's funny because astrology was the thing all along. Like, I started studying it
Mm,
probably in high school, and it was like it was a through line for almost 20 years. And so
got it.
it was so apparent to me that it almost, like, became, how do you say? Like, it was so obvious, it was right under my nose, right? And they're like, "Yeah,
Mm,
notice how this is the thing that stuck?" Like, as you
mm,
move through the spiral, like, this is the thing that traveled with you and kept, um, dialoguing with all of the other traditions that you learned. Astrology was able to connect all of them and hold it
mhm,
in its embrace. And so that's
hmm.
where, like, yeah. It's right there. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really interesting. You know, I feel like we're in an astrology renaissance and an occult renaissance right now, as it were, where there's so much better knowledge and information out there. And there's people like you with these really niche perspectives. And I'm just curious, you know, if you started studying astrology in high school, do you feel like there was quite a journey to getting it to this place that is such a deep, rich topic as opposed to something more, you know, focused on like birth charts and horoscopes and that sort of aspect of things? Yeah. Have you watched a lot of change?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mean like in myself and my own praxis with it?
Both, honestly. Yeah. Like in the culture and what's available to you, maybe, and then also what you've done with it. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, heard. There's definitely been a lot of change, and I think that my own relationship to it over the past like many years now has been this moving from a study of pattern recognition into like real relationship with the living sky. And I completely like completely relate to astrology and the planets themselves as like elder powers. I relate to them as ancestors. I relate to all of it as this like animate relationship and dialogue. And I think I have like a little thorn in my side about where we're at right now, astrologically speaking, with like lots of pop culture caricatures and what I
Mm,
feel has been like a totally diluted. Like have been saying this for so many years. It's like astrology is an incredible ancestral tool. Like this is one of the only traditions that has substantially survived thousands of years of like falls of empire and regeneration of culture, and it's still here in our hands. It is a direct gift from like I know my Egyptian ancestors. I've been studying more about like Kemetic astrology and the way that there were people watching every hour of the night to develop this system. It developed and was born from a direct relationship with the sky and with the stars and planets as deities, as bigger powers. And so to like yeah, to diminish it to like a set of typologies to me feels like so heartbreaking, right? And I think that we've like really lost sight of the tool and what its proper use is as an animist like invitation into relationship with this
hmm
like ecosystem of the mystery that's like I'm right here with you. And I think
hmm
yeah, it's moved it into like just complete relationship with me. I kind of barely look at the actual chart anymore before I do the week ahead podcast. I spend time at night outside with the visible sky, and I'm asking
hmm
the planets directly like what's going on, y'all, you know?
hmm
Because that to me is like that's where the gnosis comes from, but that's actually where the tradition comes from, is relating with the visible sky. And I have the gift of being able to see the sky where I live in the woods, you know, but
hmm
I think there's just we've like diverged from its origin, which still holds so much magic and power to it. And so I see it even in my own study over the many years, like moving from the typology. Definitely I started there because that's all I had access to was like the books and the blogs and like whoever could say a thing about astrology on YouTube, which
hmm
was yeah, questionable. And so now there's so much information that it's like I don't actually know really what to trust anymore. I know how long it took
hmm
me to get to a place where I actually am even starting to feel like I understand the surface level of astrology, you know? And so for folks that are like, I don't know, you study it for a year, I don't think you've really earned the trust of the planetary ancestors, in my opinion, you know, to like really learn how to listen, which is all through relationship. So that's my soapbox about it, but, we have so much at our fingertips, and, for me, it's like the real discernment of are those systems and those sources inviting us to experience it from here or from, like,
hmm
here, you know, from the heart or the mind, so, yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because in the world of this huge boom and interest in astrology, I don't consider myself super well versed compared to people who literally are astrology people, but compared to most people in the world, I'm very into astrology. So it's kind of a funny place to be. But it's interesting because a lot of people, just maybe a generation older than me, who are into similar currents that I am, which are a little bit more on the kind of like witchcraft, traditional witchcraft bent,
Mhm.
a lot of them are completely cut off from astrology because they grew up in a time where astrology was just pop bullshit, basically. And it's so fascinating now. I feel very lucky to be in this moment, interested in similar things that they were in, whatever, the 80s, the 70s, the early 90s, but also being able to take in this astrological boom of like interesting information. And even like aside from what you're presenting here, even just this interest in like Hellenic astrology is really valuable and very insightful. And it's just, it already goes deeper on a more intellectual level, which I really appreciate. But yeah, the way you describe the planets as ancestors, that is probably the core distinction in what you do from almost anybody else that at least I've encountered. So yeah, I'm curious, you kind of went into it just now, but maybe just honing in on that concept right there, the planets as ancestors. What do you think that that does to your perspective that is distinct from most astrological takes you will find out there?
Yeah, I think that and I say this speaking from experience because I used to really look at the sky through, like, this typology, right?
Mhm,
Or at least look at astrology through a typology where it's like, "This means this," right?
mhm,
Like, some of the doomsday takes about 2026 are like, "This
mhm,
means this,"
mhm,
and I just disagree, right? Like, it actually doesn't
mhm,
leave much room for the aliveness of, like, creation and participation and cycles unfolding. And so for me, it's more this perspective of like, okay, the planets and humans, life on Earth, have been in relationship for thousands and thousands of years. And we have data, right? We have like lore about what it means when Uranus is in Gemini or these sorts of things.
mhm,
But it's all this kind of spiralic dance. It's not linear. It's not this means that. It's not this kind of like binary, diminished way of trying to make sense, and in my opinion, with lots of compassion for it, trying to grapple with uncertainty, trying to find an answer before we know what's actually gonna happen. And so I think that when astrology is used to try to tell us what is going to happen, we're almost using it as a coping mechanism. We're not using it
mhm,
as like a self-reflective relational system that says, "Okay, Saturn, teach me what it means to be,
mhm,
honing my relationship to urgency and willpower
mhm,
and my own responsibility in that." Like, to me, astrology is not meant to give you some yeah, just like false answer and play God. It's meant to like say, "Here's what you're working with." Like, throwing you into the ring with that and saying and encouraging you to, like, be the magician and use the tools you have at your disposal and participate, you know? That's why I'm just like, you mentioned it when you reached out to me, I don't have a doomsday approach to the next
mhm,
year because I think it's too easy of an out to just say, like, "I'm going into functional freeze, I don't want anything to do with it." Like, I wanna be in, throw
mhm.
me in, coach. Tell me what I'm working with. That's it. So, yeah, I think it moves it from this, like, definitive, definition-based thing into a more, like into almost like a council and a dialogue with the bigger powers that I do believe maybe are neutral, maybe have our best interest in mind. I don't know. But I do think
Mhm,
to a certain degree, like, when I'm really trying to listen to the teachings of the planets, as my ancestors did, like, as the ancestors of astrology did, they were it's like, sure, maybe there was predictive techniques being used, but there was also a very strong awareness of all of these powers as, like, gods and things that hold intelligence that are speaking to us and yeah, that carry wisdom. So that's kind of where I sit. Yeah.
that's really interesting. I love that. Yeah, another thing that you've been doing that feels very distinctive from what I see elsewhere is seeing astrology less as weather that is happening to
Mm.
you,
Mm.
which is, I think, how most forecasts feel. It's like, oh boy, Mercury's in retrograde. That means it's similar to saying like, oh, it's going to be hailing tomorrow, so you better prepare for that. Whereas what you seem to be presenting to me, and as you were describing even earlier, your experience of the core essence of astrology and all wisdom tradition, there is this alchemical thing happening as you describe it. So Saturn being conjunct Aries isn't just something happening to you, it's probably something happening in you. Does that seem fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think how I really, I like that you brought the alchemy piece because that's really how I relate to it is, like, becoming conscious, right? And that
Mhm,
there are certain, like, constitutional qualities or even elemental qualities. Like, the karmic conditions are always changing, and we are the participator in them, right? Like, when I saw that in 2026, all of these outer elder powers are changing, right? They're taking new seats at the table. It's like, okay, the karmic arena is being set in a different way, and we're the ones, karma is action. We're the doers in that space. And so it's like changing the conditions and the energetic qualities of how we're participating. And when we can understand the shape or the texture, and of course what some of these like zodiacal prisms are bringing through us, we can understand like what Saturn's trying to transmit or what Neptune is trying to transmit in the conditions and how we can work with that more consciously, right? And so it's not so much about like the surface level telling us what is going to happen, but this kind of as within, so without hermetic philosophy of like, okay, this quality is burgeoning within me. It's maybe something I haven't expressed or really related to in my own system before. How does that want to move through me into the world? And how does that
mhm,
actually, like, how is that the thing that's actually changing the conditions of my life, right? It's actually moving from in to out rather than out to
mm,
in, that we're being added, by
mhm.
the conditions. Yeah, it's a mutually influential circuit in my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, which I really appreciate. For one, because it's just really empowering, that all these potentially difficult experiences are something you have some control over. Maybe control is the wrong word, but it's a process you're putting out there.
And I think I will say, like, I'm always sensitive to the control piece because I see it in myself too.
Mm,
Maybe a better way that I like to relate to, like, the alchemical participation that I'm speaking to
mhm,
is really just it's as simple as moving from this kind of reactive, unconscious response to the world into a more active
mhm,
response,
mhm,
like,
mhm,
moving from this subconscious reactive material that is usually like the lead that is our fear,
mhm,
desires unexpressed, unknown to us, and like bringing those to the surface to be seen and to say like, well, how do I want to work with this, this aspect of my consciousness that makes it an active tool that I can use to respond to the conditions rather than just react to them, if that makes sense.
mhm.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I really appreciate that, and that is largely why I really appreciate your podcast. Before I even knew all these other aspects of your practice and what you were doing, just that perspective is very unique. Because I do enjoy the intellectual Hellenic astrology stuff because it's kind of fascinating when they're like, "Oh, is Trump going to get assassinated in July?" It's like it's kind of interesting. It's like, huh, interesting. And when they can go back and be like, "Oh, did we get it right?" Like it's kind of interesting. It's like fun, but on like a personal level, when it comes to actually making plans or really embodying what's coming, that's not how I want to live my life. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where I sit when I'm working with folks is rather than trying to give them some, like, half-assed answer about whether or not they're gonna find love next year, I'm like,
Hmm.
"Okay, well, you're in a Venus perfection year, so why don't you develop, like, a full-on devotional relationship with the beloved and, like,
Hmm.
see what happens from there." Like, for me, astrology is an invitation into making magic a real part of our life and to
Yeah.
just, like, allowing that to be, yeah, are part of our participation. Yeah.
I really love that. That's great. So I want to get more into astrology when we do our little Patreon segment at the end.
Mm.
But before we get to that point, kind of veering back a bit, specifically the ancestor work that you do that kind of grew for you over time. I just have some questions about it in general. So you said you have a pretty pronounced ability to communicate with spirits from a young age. Were ancestors a part of that and you didn't know it? Or was that something that you hadn't unlocked yet?
That's such a great question. I don't think I've ever really thought about it that way. They definitely were, and I think in hindsight, it's like, "Oh, man, they were asking for my help." You know, like,
Mm,
um, I was like a baby psychopomp, and I think
huh,
it really overwhelmed me, you know, because especially when you're a kid and you're having a big thing that was challenging to experience was having, like, very intensely prophetic dreams and, you know,
mm,
coming to me in the dream time and, like, telling me things that would then happen. And, yeah, it's not something that was really talked about with other people in my life. So it was like, okay, I'm having a different experience of reality, and there's some communication happening that I have undeniable evidence for in the way things
mm,
play out, you know, and like
yeah,
knowing that my grandparents are gonna die or something like this as a kid is really quite intense. Um, and I think what I've learned in adulthood is that the spirits don't always like really remember that we have a nervous system capacity, you know?
mm,
Like, y'all,
mhm,
I'm 8, like, maybe not making me the baby psychopomp of the family, but, yeah, it was something that I like, shut down pretty quick, because
mm,
it was scary, right? Like, and it's been nice to, like, recover this relationship with my ancestors and with just spirits in general and be like, "Y'all, we gotta first of all just have a little repair conversation so that I can, like, learn to really trust and understand these relationships." Um, but yeah, yeah, definitely ancestral.
yeah, it's so funny how all these things that if you grow up in a culture that doesn't understand them
Mm,
can be really traumatizing or at least, generally seen as negative in our culture. But if you just have more information about it, it could be your career path, for example. You know what I mean? It could be this central part of your whole life. That's something I've experienced, not exactly that way, but just similar things where you're like, oh, this thing that was traumatizing now is meaningful. So it's interesting to hear that.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think the funny, like, push-pull of it is, like, because those things were, like, my memory of entering the world, like, my memory of the first many years of my life was just all of this spirit contact happening all the time, and so it never really went away, right? Like, I knew and was cognizant that that stuff was going on throughout all of my life, I just didn't know where to put it, I didn't know what to do with
Hmm.
it, right? And
Yeah.
it's the grief of not having animist cosmologies or teachers and traditions that can say, like, "I see you, I'm gonna teach you what
Hmm.
to do with that." Yeah.
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 That's interesting. So this is kind of specific, but
Mm.
we all, well, not all, most of us these days seem to have pretty diverse ancestries, typically about different lines coming together. I'm curious, do you think, having worked with lots of people and from your own experience, do you think certain ancestors are just particularly loud for certain people? Or do you think it's a more uh like democratic, like everybody gets a chance to come speak to this person and have a role in their lives? You know what I mean?
Funny, yeah, 100%. Like, maybe
Huh.
it's a little bit of a controversial hot take, but I even see it in regards, like, specifically between my sister and I. We like,
Huh. Mhm.
predominantly, our family is, like, Irish, Syrian,
Mhm.
and then a little Native North American, and my sister, the Irish ancestors fucking love her. They're all
Huh.
like, her gifts, her transmission, her voice, her music, it's all, Celtic as all hell, right? And for me,
Huh.
like, the whole Levant is really what
Huh.
through me stronger, and also I see the burdens that each of us walk with just generationally, like the inheritances that each of us have received, totally clear split between those different lineages.
Huh.
And so I've held that question for many years of, like, I think certain lineages claim us more than others, you
Mhm.
know? And I don't know what the ancestors have to say about that, like, yeah, I'm sensitive to the friction, but yeah, I think there's something there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's my experience too. So I've
Mhm.
assumed that's true in a broader sense, but it's such a weird thing to consider. It's like, why? You know, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
But then it's even true on like genetic level with me and my own sister. The way we look, what we get from certain things are very different. You know, so it's like I wonder if it goes down that simple, which is maybe not. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I saw that you consider yourself a ceremonialist. Is that the word you
True.
use?
Mhm.
Which I really like that word. I think it's really interesting. And you talk about on your show a lot how, you know, you'll find specific conjunction or a moon to build a ritual around, and you share that with your
Substack, yeah.
subset, yeah, which I think is really cool. So I'm just curious, you know, more broadly, you know, what your relationship is to magic.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, it's, like, very earth-based in the sense that lots of, like, I'll say it this way, the foundation of my own ritual practice is actually, like, the creation of ritual tools like drums and rattles, right? That's like the core of my ritual practice, my magical practice. And again, astrology is like a piece of that that helps me to understand what the planetary ancestors might be doing as I'm seeking to like ensoul a drum or ensoul a rattle, right? Like what kind of spirit is entering this piece and what kind of like quality is it transmitting for the player um and so for me like I don't have this kind of formal training in magic. It's all been quite intuitive and also just, like, really, listening to the earth and especially, like, the bodies of animals that I work with and their wisdom. These sorts of things are, like it's all very relational in that way for me. But of course, like, there are some keystones of, um, electional astrology. Like, I know what happens when Venus is at the midheaven, right?
Mhm,
For, like, the creation of a talisman or something like this. I've
mhm.
dabbled enough in those realms to know, um, to have awareness of, like, how that's also influencing a ritual or a creation of something, right? But yeah, I don't I mean, I'm actually, like, really into trolldom right now, which is how I
Cool.
work, so,
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
yeah, so there's a little sneaky thing there that's very new for me.
Huh.
I'm scoping those ancestors out like a come in peace, you know?
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's really been through a lot of the teachings of the Anishinaabe tradition that I'm not necessarily gonna share here, but, like this emphasis on relating to the bodies of the animals, the bodies of like the stars and the bodies of, you know, the people and the spirits, ancestors that we're working with. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. I love that. Um, do you see a distinction between magic and ceremony, or is this
Mm,
one thing?
I don't see a distinction at all. I
Okay.
think what came to mind is like, and I will say, I don't know if I know enough about like I'm sensitive to like my own definitions of magic and ceremony.
Well, that's
Um,
all I care about. I don't
yeah.
I don't care about any official definitions. I'm asking you, like,
Yeah.
for
I
yourself,
mean, I
what
don't
is
think
it?
there
Yeah.
are, right? But, you know,
Yeah,
there's intimidation of
exactly.
proper practitioners out there that are like,
Yeah.
difference.
That's not
But
for me.
yeah, yeah, great, love that. But, you know, so the thing that actually honestly came up for me is, you know, I've been a lifelong dancer and in a theater troupe, and whenever we perform uh, you know, theater, to me, it's like a huge ceremonial act. And the
Mm,
things that take place inside of that container actually like have impact on the lives of us, like participating in the theater and also like the people that watch. Like it's all one big ritual,
mm,
you know? And something I find myself
mhm.
saying more and more over the past few years is like it's all part of the ritual. And I don't think I have any differentiation anymore between, you know, where ritual life ends and anything else begins, right? It's like all magical, all
Mhm.
yeah, all part of the theater of life in a way, as corny as that sounds.
No, I love it. It's
It's really
great.
real, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're in constant relationship with, like, the unseen, that I can't see any differentiation anymore, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was your most recent podcast. It was a recent one, and you got up like Alan, which, I often just like work with as like emboss, which is just, the Irish version of it or whatever. But yeah, that's whenever people have this idea of magic as like this very specific manipulation we are doing, which I have trouble with. I think things like Awen are a really good way of reframing that into it's more of a co-creation with existence. We're all doing it all the time. Some of us are just getting a really clear channel through that we're working with instead of some people that are cutting themselves off from what is probably an imminent thing. Um, so yeah, how is magic for you intrinsic to creativity?
Yes. It's very on my mind lately.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I think the more that I have seen how much the center of my ritual praxis is like this relationship with the materials and the creative act of like bringing something to life. The heart of it is that my ancestors kind of gave me a little like smack upside the head gently but fiercely a few weeks ago of like the magic and creativity, this intersection is like because I have a body, I can make things happen in our world. Like that's
Mm,
extremely creative. It's also extremely magical, right? Like
mhm,
my when I'm making a drum, I really anything that I've done in my life to me has been afforded by my relationship with the spirits. There's nothing I have done that is just my own doing. Like it is my ability to ask them to be like to work through me, right? Kind of in this beautiful like imbus kind of way, right? Like work through me, make me the hollow bone. And so to me, the creative act, which is a form of channeling, no matter if you're making a physical object, if you're writing, speaking, doing whatever, it's all creative because you exist in a body and you have this ability to impact the material world, and assert your will as a creative being. That to me is the essence of the magician, right? Is someone who
mhm,
really understands they have everything they need to influence the material world to make things happen. Um, and so it's just kind of seeing yourself as the conduit of that. And really, more and more, I see it's about owning the responsibility of that. Like, that if I'm aware of that role that I play in the creation of the world or whatever it is, I can start to take my own magic more seriously, right? That
mhm,
there's a huge responsibility there. And to not be foolish about it, thinking that it's all just my own doing, that really, like, I'm indebted to the spirits that wanna work through me. That's whether it's the ancestors or deities that you're working with, you're just the vessel, bro. That's it. So,
mhm.
it's kind like, that to me is the essence of it, and owning that, like, as a responsibility of stewardship, yeah.
Yeah, you know, um, another thing about a lot of what you speak about on your podcast and gathering from the things that you do outside of it, it seems like really intrinsic to a lot of what you do is healing and maybe in various ways. And that's something I see interestingly as a pretty big pitfall of a lot of my background and my interests, which are like this traditional witchcraft thing, which I think is a broad spectrum of approaches and currents, but rarely do you see healing really come up very often.
Mm,
It's kind of glossed over. And I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons for it. But I'm curious, again, kind of focusing on like magic as this natural, imminent thing we all probably are doing to some degree, whether we're doing it well or not. What is the role of healing in magic
mm,
for you?
mhm. The thing that comes to mind first is, it's the sense that we have the opportunity to create the conditions for anything to happen with magic. And in that, why and maybe this is just my own constitution being an extremely tender person that has a really big fucking heart, is like, why wouldn't we use that opportunity to, like, try to transform the suffering that is so dense in the hearts and minds of, like, this realm, whatever this kind of strange karmic realm is that we find ourselves in. I think that it's just been a kind of, like, attunement that I've had since I was very young, is, like, being unable to not just feel the grief and the weight of, like, navigating this thing called life, and so, to me, I think it's just this, like, affinity for seeing that there's the potential to transform anything, and it goes back to that thing about alchemy, like becoming conscious of what it is that we're working with. And I think to me healing is like the act of becoming conscious and seeing the source of from which things come and what we can do with that and about that. And I find magic to be an incredible, like, facilitator of actually, engaging directly with the root of things, the tools we have to navigate it, and, like, the repair process of whatever healing might look like. So, yeah, for me, it's like, well, if you can, why wouldn't you? Like, help people get
Mhm,
free from some
mhm.
of that, like, density. So, yeah, that's my tender take.
No, I love that. I think that's really great. And then also though, I was just thinking about it before the show and the nature of healing, because obviously there's healing in the sense of something that we obviously think needs to be healed, like somebody is ill, somebody is unwell, with something, some sort of trauma from an experience, what have you. But I wonder if healing is bigger than that, in the
Mhm,
sense that maybe if I were coming to any number of things I was planning to do a magical act to affect,
mhm.
that maybe my naturally wouldn't occur to me as being based on something that needed healing. Maybe I'm, oh man, like we need some help financially right now. Things are not looking good. I need to do something. As opposed to going like, how do I do a spell for abundance and wealth? Would it be beneficial to more often consider healing when trying to get an outcome in life? If that makes sense. Looking at this from like a very like practical magic view.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great question. You spoke to at the beginning of that, like, what is the nature of healing? And
Mm,
I think that maybe like a response to what you're bringing there is I see that the nature of real healing occurs when there's the conditions for like deep relationship occurring, whether it's like the relationship inside of someone else, inside like the relationship between us and the land, the relationship between us and our ancestors, and if there's a repair needed in the relational space between whatever two bodies are engaging with one another. And so it's such an interesting example you give about the money thing because it's like holding the inquiry of like where might there be a repair in the relationship with something that's actually influencing the financial situation that can be
mhm,
like the root cause, because I feel oftentimes a need for healing comes from something being fragmented or ruptured. It comes from a
mhm,
fracture in connection. And so, um, where can that repair be brought? And I think that part of healing is at least in the work that I do with people, is like reminding folks of their own agency to repair that relationship with themselves or with their ancestors or with the land, etc. Like I'm not going to do any of it for you. I'm not capable of that. And to
mhm,
say that it's kind of the strange Western paradigm we've created where we go like kiss the feet of the doctor and say like give me a pill. It's like I actually don't have that power as a traditional healer. My work is in like leading you back to yourself and creating the conditions inside of yourself for some transformation to occur. And oftentimes that is like, yeah, handing the responsibility back to the person and reminding them like you can do this too. There might be some efforting and I'm with you in it, but in regards to magical work there too, I think it's like, oof. Yeah, there's something there about repair and relationship and, um, yeah, being in, like, right relationship with all of the different dimensions that create the conditions of anything, be it your
mhm.
financial situation, etcetera. So, it's not fully formed, but there's maybe something there to ponder. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Before we head into a little Patreon segment, I thought it'd be fun to end this episode, this portion of the episode, with heading back to astrology.
Mhm.
We talked about how you have a different perspective than a lot of what you would find out there if you're looking at the year ahead forecasts. And for a really in depth view of the year ahead, you have a whole episode coming out all on that. So for people that want to go really nitty gritty, go check that out on Altar of Stars. But for just kind of general overview for people and maybe keeping in mind some of what we've talked about here, um, what is your big picture of 2026 looking like right now?
Hot take?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Take? Oh, boy. Oh, gosh. My high level hot take of 2026 is that, yeah, I've said it before. It's like really that no one is coming to save you and you got this. And you and that whole army of like relations that you have built, seen and unseen, known and unknown, is with you in that, you know? And I think that a lot of the work of 2026 is no longer waiting for someone else to do it for us. No one like the passivity is just not an option anymore. And I think that if we resign ourselves to just waiting around for change to occur or try to skip steps and just like get to it, I think so much of it is trying to be in right relationship with time and with change and the unfoldment of things. That the conditions of our life are shifting, and again, like the best suggestion I have for folks and maybe like practitioners out there is to really create the conditions inside of ourselves to learn how to respond rather than react to the change that's underway, to really be in our seat of agency, which to me is like a place of center. It's not trying to force shit, it's not trying to skip steps, it's not just trying to get it over with because it's uncomfortable to not know what the fuck is going on, but to actually really like lean back into ourselves and our practice and our relationship with the bigger powers to say like, okay, throw me in, coach. Like I've actually been preparing the whole time for this. Like to a certain degree, I'm like, I think this is what most of us ask for, right? Like
Hmm.
there's a little bit of that fierceness of like, okay, then let's go. You said you wanted change and growth and to get out of this like bind that you're in. This is actually what it feels like. Isn't it
Hmm.
uncomfortable? Yeah. Like growing our capacity to be with that so we're not just like freaking out and hating it, but really feeling like, wow, okay, let's go. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It seems like I don't really know many people who, especially if they're looking at like a macro level, are really happy with the way the world is,
Yeah.
like on any level, politically, economically. I think most people have the sense that like everything's fucked. We want it to be different. So yeah, I think really trying to embrace that none of that change was ever going to happen without any friction or difficulty. It was always going to be something difficult,
Or about
to
your
bring it about.
participation. Yeah. It's like it
Hmm.
actually also requires your participation. And,
Hmm.
and I think that what the last year or so has really shown us is like, okay, this kind of sucks and we don't want it to be this way. Now it's like, okay, what are you going to do about it? Like, let's make something happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Those are great words of wisdom. So yeah, we're going to do a Patreon in a second where I'm going to ask you about a couple key planetary movements in the first half of next year, just to get your take on how maybe a magical practitioner should be thinking about them. But before we do that, what would you like to plug for the listeners out there?
Gosh, I think that the heart of all the things that I really care about sharing are at the Altar of Stars. So on Substack, the Altar of Stars, I share weekly readings and a bunch of other things that are kind of just coming through the mercurial waves. So yeah, you can find me over there. Hmm.
Love it. Yeah, and then you have the altar What's your regular website called?
It's just the altar. Yeah.
Yeah, the altar. So yeah, at the altar, it goes a little bit more into the vast array of other things you do and offer, which is really cool. So love it.
Thanks so
And
much.
now magically we're on the Patreon podcast. Welcome. It's a nice intimate green room experience back here. So yeah, to carry on what we were talking about there, I don't want to like hog any of what you will be presenting on your own platforms. I'm kind of hoping we can maybe like look at it from a slightly different angle. So yeah, really focusing on this idea of like, how magical practitioners, people who are really into these things, should consider
Mm,
some of the planetary movements, probably more on an individual level, more so than a what should we be prepared for happening in politics or whatever. Um, yeah, do you have any overview on that before I present a few key dates to consider?
definitely. Yeah. So I think that the high level thing that I've been sitting with as a practitioner is like, okay, we've been in an earth and water paradigm for many years now. Earth and water gets sticky, it gets dense, it gets muddy.